Hello, and welcome to the Other Team's Tunes Tuesday, a weekly series that discusses music and matters with queer artists you love. I'm your host, Maud Mosley. My pronouns are they, them, and joining me this week is LA-based artist Moth. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. My name's Moth. I use they, she pronouns, and I'm sitting on my porch.
I
That's
love
about
it.
the story, right? Like,
Yes. Giving us a little taste of that LA weather too. I know a lot of us watching more locally are hoping for that warmer weather soon. But yeah, I'm really excited just to talk about what you've been up to because recently, you released your debut album, I Don't Want You to Worry Anymore. And, in the past, you've been a touring member of several groups and released singles prior to the album. So, you're definitely not new to music or the music scene, but how does it feel to be releasing, this full debut solo work?
well, it's funny that you use the words new because that is how it feels. It's this thing where like I feel like I've been around forever. Like in some ways, I feel like an old person, kind of like walking around. I'm like I've been here for 10 years, but being able to put out my first full length body of work, it's like, well, it's so new that it doesn't erase the last 10 years that I spent in music, but it almost like it ends those 10 years and categorizes them into a little folder, and I can put those 10 years away, and I'm like, I'm starting another 10 years. I'm starting a brand new 10 years. And that's been kind of exciting. So it has like brought a sort of youthfulness back to music for me that I haven't gotten to experience in quite a while, because it's like it's the first time I've been able to be consumed in that long of a format.
Yeah, that's a really exciting way to look at it. How do you think that, perspective impacted the album when you were working on it?
So funny enough, I don't know if I felt that way until after the record was done, and after kind of even getting closer to it coming out, because um it's just been such a long journey. I mean, we were working on those songs in December of 2020. It was when I was out in the studio, and yeah, I mean, the we didn't even know we were making an album when we were making it. Like it was like supposed to be an EP, and suddenly a few songs felt like they needed a little bit of extra padding. And then I kept writing and I kept writing, and eventually we were looking around and we were like, I think this is an album. And then when came time to go to do the record, it was like, okay, well, yeah. Then it felt new. Then it was like, I've never done this, and then it was scary and exciting and kind of this new thing where it's like, I had to start thinking about songs in terms of a 45-minute piece of work instead of a song on its own, or a song and a few other songs together. And it really changed the way that I approached each spot, because I was like, well, if it doesn't land in this certain way within these 3 minutes, I have an entire other 42 minutes to work with to get this sort of ebb and flow and these dynamics in, and that was kind of like a really exciting spot to be in creatively.
Yeah, definitely. I love, seeing that, new perspective and those different feelings going into it. But also, do you feel like all that past experience came into building the album as well? And how so?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was um I think that I had been through so many bands and learned so much about arrangement and learned so much about recording. Even just, one thing that was kind of different about it was that I used to primarily have a lot of experience in the live world. And then during COVID, I ended up learning a lot about the recording world. And that was kind of the first time I'd ever gotten to really get good at recording. Because I think in the past I was like good at playing live, but I wasn't good at getting that to translate on records. And this was like the first time where I had long enough to sit with it to get good at recording, to be able to basically document exciting moments in like a way that was real, and document exciting moments in a way that would translate to a listener. and didn't feel like some sort of like dull secondhand experience of it. And so that was kind of where the taking all of the experience I had from live and remembering it's like, this is what it feels like when it's in the room. This is what a drum kit feels like when it's in the room. This is what it feels like when you're playing a live show. Why doesn't it sound like this on record? How do we get it to sound like this on record? And that's kind of why a lot of the album has like a slightly more raw, slightly softer sound approach to it, was because it was me trying to successfully recreate what it feels like when a band is actually playing in front of you, but without losing the pop sensibility.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think being able to capture that kind of live feeling in recorded music, that really just amps it up to the next level. It's a different kind of experience for the listener. And I absolutely love seeing that in the album. And, you know, many of the lyrics on the album, I Don't Want You to Worry Anymore, draw attention to a comfortable closeness with death that can be said and seen in a lot of ways. How did it feel to explore that particular sentiment through your writing?
I think it was kind of interesting because I think that, like, when you say death, there's that can mean more than one thing. You know, a lot of the when I'm talking about death on the record, though some of it is about being like, oh, I'm scared of dying. That is actually terrifying. But a lot of it is like the death of my experience with religion, the death of my experience with like being in the closet, the death of my experience with like these sorts of different types of deaths, these like character development deaths that once you go past that point, like once you acknowledge that you are not cisgender, once you acknowledge that you are not straight, you don't get to return to it. And so for that reason, it is like a death to me. And like once you acknowledge that, like, you know, when you leave the church, you can't get to go back to it. It's like you know too much. And so this sort of like death by knowledge of self and death by character development. And they're kind of deaths that like we as humans will continue to have throughout our entire lives. And I think that that's the part that's comforting. That's the part that's close. And that's the part that I like would choose to emphasize in my personal experience and kind of say that like this is the healthy relationship with death. As far as actually dying is concerned, I'm not about it. I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. Live slow, grow old. All about
Exactly. Exactly. I love to live slow. I mean, look, I've been here, I'm 25, and it feels like I've been here for fucking ever. Like it feels like I've been here a very long time. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, so much joy in that. So much joy in that. And yeah, it's really interesting just to hear you talk about, you know, all the different ways death and life intertwine, you know, all the different kinds of deaths that we go through. And I also just found it so particularly interesting because of the way you were just expressing that, you know, when you moved into this album and, you know, Moth, you were really releasing and packaging up those last 10 years you've been in. And you had almost expressed that in this similar kind of way of that was a death and now you're here. So I just love seeing like how much this comes up throughout your process. I mean, in and outside of the album.
Oh yeah. I mean, personally, I'm a giant fan of closing doors and starting new ones because I think that you like run the risk of becoming like I love nostalgia. I'm an incredibly nostalgic person, but I think that if you get too stuck in it, you end up not being present. And that's like not fun for you or anyone around you. I think it's kind of exciting to look around and say like, well, I've actually been a few different people in this whole experience because like there were things that I needed to learn were true to myself. There were things that I needed to learn were not true to myself. And like that's kind of like a thrilling space to be, which is to say like you can close the door and keep going. You can like continue to transform. You can experience death in a healthy way over and over and over again as many times as you want or as few times as you want. And it's sort of, but for me, like I'm a giant fan of closing the door, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so, so, so impactful. And with that in mind, I also want to draw attention to the cover art for the album. Because I mean, it goes past the cover art, from your cover art to the style in your music videos, the outfits, you wear in your TikToks. Your look has this incredible ethereal energy. So how
Oh, thanks.
do music and fashion, work together in your arts practice? Because, it's so clearly and excitingly present.
Oh, I mean, they're everything together. Like you can't have one without the other. Well, okay, so there was this one really crazy defining moment for me where I understood the impact of fashion and music, which was that I saw the same band 2 nights in a row without realizing it. And the first night I saw them, they were dressed up in all black, this kind of like witchy goth look. And I remember listening and being like, oh, like they're kind of a goth band. This is cool. This is awesome. I love it. I went to a show the next day and they played and they were wearing like mom jeans and like 90s white shirts. And I literally was like, oh, they're kind of a 90s band. And I swear that I like heard the same band differently based off of the outfits they were wearing. And after that happened, I was like, okay, that's how much it matters. Like fashion is so important in music that it literally affects how you think a band sounds from the outside. And it also, in my eyes, except like I think that the weirder your fashion is, the weirder people will accept your music is, and the more you get to do with it. And so there's this kind of drama with fashion. And there's two avenues for it. One is there's a drama in fashion that allows you to have more drama in the music. I don't think that the songs on the record would sound the same or come off the same live if I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt and I was kind of just like looking like a normal person, like a DIY band, right? I think that you would view me as a different artist, but fashion brings out this like kind of extra character, this more female experience of the record. And like when I think that fashion is like the reason that the album's not coming from the perspective of a straight male. Because you see the cover and it's like that's the person telling me these things. I suddenly receive these messages differently. So it's incredibly important in that aspect to me. I think that it's incredibly important to my gender identity as well. And the thing about it too is that I find that like, everybody, if you put on an outfit that you just love, you sort of like walk a little taller, like there's this confidence to it. And I think it's something everyone experiences. Like when you look in the mirror and you're like, I look kind of good right now. And like that makes me feel differently. I'm gonna navigate my daily life differently. It's the same, it's that effect of like finding confidence in the woman I am is going to affect how I write, is going to affect how I deliver the songs. So when I walk in and I feel great about the presentation and the fashion of it, and I'm enjoying myself through fashion, I'm gonna give you a more confident performance. Like I'm going to be like, look, this is the thing, and there's this sort of like air to it that I don't think you can receive without the fashion.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I just love that really powerful way that fashion, music, and like gender and gender expression are all intertwining and just like benefiting one another and creating this way where you can just really put yourself out there in the way that you want to be
Oh
presented
yeah.
and seen and perceived, and have your work be acknowledged through a particular lens that you are defining.
Oh yeah. And you don't have to tell a queer person how fucking important fashion is. Like you know what I mean? Like we know how important it is. It's like integral to how we can have our most true experiences. Like it's like it's fucking life or death. Fashion is it's this crazy thing. But yeah, I mean it it matters outside of that as well. It's just so important. I love it.
I absolutely love it too. And I have loved having you on today. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's Tunes Tuesday. If you would like to listen to the album that we've been discussing, the songs, the music videos, checking them out on social media, you can find all of those links below, and Moth will be playing us out.
You're sleeping in, I know exactly.